Hello and welcome to tutorial 181. Back in tutorial 23, I wrote a program that essentially drew a line break chart on top of an ordinary chart. So this had the advantage of being able to see what the line break would do, but also seeing what the underlying price action looked underneath that. So you could effectively have a line break chart and a regular minute chart on the same chart. And so that looked something like you can see on this white chart here at the moment. This is tutorial 23, and then on the right you can see a real 3-line break chart. You can see how the boxes are being drawn on the chart, and that represents the same thing as on the 3-line break chart. In fact, you can see it a little bit more clearly on this new program. And what I've done in this new program, the original used an array to do the calculation. What I've done is converted that program to use a vector, and somebody asked me if I could do some tutorials about converting a vector, or rather an array to use a vector. And so that's what we've done in this tutorial. And you can see what's happening is where the bars actually don't involve a new line being drawn. Lines is what we call these bars in a line break chart. Then you essentially just get a longer bar like this drawn on the chart. You can see in this example here, in this down bar, it's actually quite a long bar there. And if you were to go onto the actual line break chart, I think it would probably be this bar here, because we don't really include time in the line break chart. Anyway, the main purpose of this is to demonstrate how to convert from the array to the vector. And what I suggest, that if you're interested in the calculation that I've used in doing this, is to go to the tutorial 23 page, and I've done various videos there, including some detailed explanation of how the calculation takes place. But let's jump into the programs and we can do some comparison between the two. So the new program is called tutorial 181. The original one is tutorial 23. So let's first of all start with tutorial 23, and right at the beginning of the tutorial we make a decision with the first bar of the chart after a number of max bars back, if it's going to be an up or down bar, using just essentially if close is greater or equal to open, then we say it's an up bar, and alternatively if close is less than open, then we say it's a down bar, and then we do some setup there. In the array, we set for the up bars, we set all the values in the array to be 9999. It's an arbitrary large number. We don't need to do that for the down bar because the values are already in the array set to 0. So essentially what we've got is an array which has got, since this is a 3-line break chart in this particular case, because num bars break is equal to 3, we've got 2 to 3, so that's 2 and 3, that's just 2 bars we're setting up there. And then we've got this value here, last bars square brackets 1, that's the first element of the array, and we're setting that to be equal to open. Now the other things you can look in the previous videos to see how those fit in, and they don't really change much between the two versions. But let's look at tutorial 181, and this is using a vector. We set the vector, or we put the vector in the vars like so, but what we also need to do is create the vector, and we do that in a one statement. There's a couple of methods above there that you saw I just skipped by. We'll look at those a little bit more later, but we create the vector here in the one statement, and then very similar to what we've done in the previous program, except we're doing putting the values in there using this thing called pushback. And what that does is it adds a value and creates a new element in the vector. And then we're doing that 9999999 for a couple of values, and then for the third value we can use this thing vect1 being the name of our vector, dot insert. And what that does is it inserts a value into a specific slot in the vector, and then it shunts the values along. So it actually inserts it before the values that we've already inserted. Now that's very similar both ways. We put the 9999999, an arbitrary large number. But what we also must do for the supposed down bar is we must put in values for the 0 to populate the vector, because one of the differences with the vector is that we actually need to create the values in there. They're not there by default, and we will get an error if we try and access an element in the vector that's actually not present. So that's the initialization. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to do this for both sides, but what we're going to look at is for an up bar, an up line, as we're saying in this case. With the array, we used the extremes array function. And what this did was find the largest or the smallest value in the array. And if you right click and say definition, you'll find how that syntax works. In fact, you can choose the highest or the lowest based on a high-low value. So if you put in 1 there, it's the highest. You put in -1, it's the lowest. So in our case, in this first case, we're putting -1, so we're trying to find the lowest. And the lowest value gets put in O extreme val. And then you can see the syntax, or the reason we're doing the syntax in the tutorial 23 videos. But what we have to do is we use a thing called array stepper one dimension, which is a function which I think I may have written, but anyway, it doesn't matter. That goes through the array and steps everything back so that we can then put the new value in the first position. Now, the thing with the array is that any of the TradeStation functions that work with it assume that we're not using the 0 position, although you can use 0, but the functions won't reference it. So I'm putting the values into the first position there, and then if we go under the extreme value, we have a change of direction. Again, I'll refer you back to the videos in tutorial 23 as to the actual way this program works. Now, for the first part of this up thing in tutorial 181, let's just compare. So now in this case, we need to find the lowest value in the vector. Now, fortunately for us, the lowest and the highest functions can also be applied to vectors. So that gives us a very, very easy way of finding out what the lowest in the vector is. And so what we then do is, if it is the end of a bar, the last tick of a bar, then we insert the value, the running high bar last, into the vector at position 1. And then because it's the insert, it moves all the other values down. And also, because we want to keep the vector a certain size of 3, because we're going to be finding highest and lowest, so we need to make sure we've just got the last 3 values for a 3-line break, or it would be more obviously if we had a 4-line break or a 5-line break, but in this example it's a 3-line break. And what we say is if vector.count is greater than bars break, then we pop back, then we take the value of the last value of the vector to maintain it at that value of 3 items. So in some senses this is easier because we have this function insert. We don't need to do the stepper thing. Now the second part of the uplines is if close is less than the extreme value. In other words, we're starting a new line in a new direction. So we've been going up and now we're going to go down. So what we do here is we go for the values, and we put for the values 2 numbers break, in this case 3, so values 2 and 3, we put in the value of the running high, and then in the first value we directly put in running high last. Using the vector, somewhat similar, but change in direction. If it's the last bar on the chart, what we do is we actually clear the vector and then we repopulate it. And we do that for values 1 to numbers break, in this case 3, -1, that gives us 2. So 1 and 2, we push back this value running high, and then we insert into the 0 position the running high last. And that gives us the same effect as what we've done with the array. That is for the up bars when we're continuing in an up direction or we're changing direction, and then the rest of it is similar in reverse for going the other way. I'll just scan down that if you are making notes. And then we have if downline or if upline, and we have that in both tutorial 181 and tutorial 23. But in tutorial 23 I had a little function here which drew the boxes, and that function was using the original TL_new type syntax. In this new program we're doing that using a method drawBox, and the items we're putting in the method are a DT point for the datetime converted from the EL datetime of D&T, the running low value, and the DT point create datetime from the EL datetime from the date 1 bar ago, time 1 bar ago, and then using the running bar last. And we're putting in the down color and the pattern and the transparency. And if you're interested in that method, it's included in the tutorial. And here it is. And so straightforward. You can see the inputs, the start date time, end date time, the color, zone shading, zone transparency, and we create the rectangle. Then we can change the color, the fill pattern, the zone box weight, and we've said zone box persist false because in this case we want it to draw each tick but then not remember it beyond that, because we're then drawing it the next tick. Then we use drawingObjects.add to add this to the chart. Now you probably, if you had a lot of data, eventually you're going to end up with a lot of drawing objects, and as you may know, this could cause problems with memory and awkward messages. So what I've done, I've said if the number is greater than 500 and it's the end of last tick of a bar, then we're going to delete the last drawing object. You'll also notice here we've got some useful syntax which takes not only the transparency but the color, and so we get the color with the transparency applied. And then the other method that I've included here is one which takes creates a legacy color from a color object name. And we're doing that. We're doing color.fromName, the color string being the name of the color object, and then we're creating that into an integer which can then be used. For example, if we go down to the plots that's also included, we draw the boxes if drawBars is set to true, and that's a user input. But we also do these plots, but because I wanted to use the same colors as you could potentially use for the boxes, I had to use this the method legacy color from color object to convert that into something that could be used with the plot. And if you go to the program page, tutorial 181, you'll see that just included those available colors just to remind you what you could use in those slots. I've just been rather boring and used red and green in this example. So I hope this tutorial might be useful to you. It's not super difficult converting from arrays to vectors, and of course it really depends on the conversion that you're doing, the type of program that you're doing, but there are some challenges. If you are interested in this sort of thing, then please join the Markplex email list, and then I will send an occasional email letting you know when I've created a new tutorial or program. If you want to get more into Easy Language, then please consider the Gold Pass membership, and please subscribe to wherever you're watching this video. Thank you very much.